morning, everyone. Happy Mondays. Welcome to a world with music in it on a Monday morning. Fantastic. I've been on at them for ages to get some sound on my credits. Here we go. Welcome to the News Agenda with me, Fleet Street Fox. And today I'm joined by the Mirror's assistant editor, Jason, bopping away in the background, Beattie. Morning, Jason.
Morning, Susie. I'm pumped.
We did think about bringing you the Tory news agenda this week from Party Conference, but we realised we'd rather play Yahtzee with Nazis, so we're doing it from the safety of our bedrooms again instead. Sorry if you were expecting Boris Johnson to turn up and be questioned by me. Unlikely. Now, this is the People's Pay-Per-View, so get into the comments, ask us your questions. We can't answer them all, but we will answer the best ones. So what have we got today? Well, the Mirror has splashed on an exclusive, fancy that, an exclusive, and a special survey which has found out that COVID has sparked a mental health crisis that could affect us for a generation. Now, Jason, can you take us through the findings? What are the headlines? What does it show?
So, Susie, this is we're doing a week series in the print and online on what we're calling almost a hidden epidemic. This is one of the consequences of COVID. It has taken its toll on people's mental health. Now, mental health services were already under extreme pressure before COVID struck, and this has made it worse. So we're finding that across the country, this poll we did has shown that almost every demographic is reporting that they're feeling more anxious. Some people are feeling kind of suicidal thoughts. And as I say, it's across the age range as well. So you've got, one of the interesting factors was parents are saying, 13% of the parents we polled said that, their children's mental health has got worse. And as we know, the services at the moment just can't cope. And that's what's really worrying.
Yeah, exactly. Now, it says that 1 in 12 people report having panic attacks in the past, well, it was almost 2 years, isn't it? 1 in 15 have thought about suicide. 1 in 4 are saying that their mental health is not the same as it was. I've got chocolate biscuit on my lip, I've just noticed. Sorry, it looked like a terrible wart, but no, it's chocolate biscuit. 1 in 4 people are saying their mental health is not the same as before. So we've got some really horrific personal testimonies there. On the page 4-5 spread, there's an ICU nurse called Jessica who says, and this quote is worth reading out loud, "When I went to sleep, I would dream I was at work. So when I woke up, it was as if I'd just done another shift." It's like you're never not there. Now she managed to get some help with a psychologist and get back onto the wards again, although she's still deeply affected. Down in the bottom left corner there, Logan, who's 15, became very withdrawn during his GCSEs, but he couldn't get help, according to his mum, because his local trust said he wasn't bad enough, which, of course, early intervention stops things getting too bad, one would have thought. Now, Jason, we've seen something similar in young girls and eating disorders that have grown during the pandemic, and they're not offered help until their BMI reaches a certain point, which is a sort of critical point, which often is too late for anybody. And that's sort of a way that officialdom is restricting mental health services because we don't have enough of them. They narrow the criteria for qualifying, which of course saves some money in the short term. But the way to fix this is a proper mental health service, isn't it? Spear Joe Spear, whoever you may be, says, "My depression's hit me like a ton of bricks. My anxiety is through the roof." So the way to fix this is a proper mental health service. Do we have one?
No, and what we do have is a very kind of uneven provision of mental health services, particularly for children. There's all sorts of problems here. One is CAMS, this is Children and Adolescent Mental Health Services, but they're underfunded, and they have been underfunded for some time. And it really is a postcode lottery. So you go, depending on your NHS trust and where you live in the country, you can get very, very good service. In other areas, it's almost non-existent, and actually trying to just get a referral is hard enough. And once you get a referral, then you can have a very, very long wait before you get any treatment, if any at all. As a result of the lack of provision of services, more and more people are turning up to A&E. Massive rise in number of people turning up to A&E with mental health problems. A&E is about the worst place to go if you have mental health problems. They're noisy, they're busy, they're rushed, and the environment is very unsettling. So you find yourself on a very, very noisy, busy ward, which, as you can imagine, if you've got any sort of anxiety or autism or any other problems like that, is fundamentally unsettling. So that's a problem. And then you can kind of roll back. If you do get a bed, that bed can be hundreds of miles from your home. I've actually been inside a couple of mental health hospitals, and the surroundings, the environment is awful. It's, again, they are noisy and uncomfortable. So that's incredibly difficult. But we come back to the main issue here is this is long-term underfunding. It's not, I mean, COVID has made a bad situation worse. So if you want to try and solve this problem, it should have been investment at least a decade, if not 2 decades ago.
Yeah, it's structural, isn't it? It's the fundamental roots of the thing. Now, Kay says there is lots of help out there. Please seek medical help. It's there for anyone suffering. And if you do have anything that we're talking about in the show today, then please do speak to your GP, speak to Samaritans, try and get some help. But one of the fundamental problems is that, of course, if you need that help, then you're mentally ill. And you may be less robust in terms of, being able to just go out there and batter a door down and insist on being helped. It's not going to be as easy for you. And Jack says mental health care has been a disgrace for years. I'm 57. I've been on antidepressants since my late teens. Gosh, 40 years, Jack. GPs just give them out. In June 2020, I got sectioned and was diagnosed with EUPD. I've never been on them since, never needed them. It makes me angry, but now I'm trying to get on with my life. I would never, ever step into a hospital, A&E, with mental health problems ever again. The service is an absolute disgrace. It does seem, from what Jack's saying there and what you've said, that we need a separate health service, if you like, or something that's part of the NHS, but it's just you don't go to the same hospital for the same reasons. You used to have mental health hospitals.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, the people kind of contacting us to share their experience. I mean, I'm kind of, that it takes a bit of bravery to do that, and we're very grateful. But it's also very important, because actually talking is by far the best thing you can do. And the more you can share and be open about this, the more actually it helps other people, as well as sometimes yourself. So thank you very much for those who are sharing. And then, Susie, I think there's a wider discussion even before we get on to actually how the NHS can or cannot cope. And obviously it's not coping in certain areas, and that's no reflection on the staff. They're doing their best in very difficult circumstances. And this kind of, there is a clear shortage of psychiatrists. There's a clear shortage of NHS mental health nurses. There's a clear shortage of actually mental health kind of education in schools. But then there's the much bigger, wider problem of why, as a country, we've got worsening mental health. And that you go back to the pressures of social media. You look at education, you look at the mainstream media as well, and how it portrays people, and you look at things like poverty and deprivation and housing, because they all figure, and they're all important. And nobody's ever looked at this in the round, so to speak. We kind of concentrate on little areas, but at some point somebody needs to put these together and go, what are we doing wrong as a society that this keeps happening?
Yeah. Now, Paula said there, very briefly, she's taken down again, but Paula said there that the problem's been very difficult for anyone with children or older people. And that's one of the things the survey shows, is that, as Jason's already said, it spans the generations. Older people, people aged 55 to 64, are reporting problems, as well as people who are still at school. And that's the issue. And of course, what we have now as well, post-pandemic, although people are still worried about the disease, and people are still worried about going out, and people are going out, and other people saying, well, you should, and telling them what they should and shouldn't do, which doesn't help necessarily. So don't go and bully people into being more out there if they don't feel like it. We've also got a massive rise in the cost of living. We've got inflation that's getting a little bit out of control. We've got universal credit cuts for £20 a week. We've got a fuel crisis. We've got an energy crisis. And of course, there is an actual clown in charge. And he's at Tory conference this week, baking cakes and telling women who might be murdered that all they need to do is wait for a bus to go past and flag that one down. But the Tories would tell us, Jason, if we wanted them on our show, that they're putting in £500 million this year, 500 million into mental health services this year. And it'll be 2.3 billion by 2023-24. And that should help 2 million more people. Is that going to do it, though?
Well, I mean, any additional money helps. But the problem with kind of you get with all Tory announcements, and this is not exclusive to mental health or anything, is you're making up for a decade of underfunding. And we got this issue with, say, when Boris Johnson boasts about getting 20,000 more police officers, he cut the police by 22,000. They're not even close to getting the 20,000 yet. They still only recruited about 11,000. So, and it's the same issue with mental health. So you kind of say, yes, it's great, we're putting extra 500 million in, but when you cut public health budgets year on year, and when you cut mental health provision year on year, this is actually, this is just compensating a little bit of the damage which is already done. And that's why you're getting it.
No, of course. Now, we had that picture of Nadine Dorries in there briefly, because she used to be Minister for Mental Health, and during her tenure there, obviously, as our survey shows, didn't do quite enough, whatever it was she did do. Hopefully she's going to do better as Culture Secretary, which she is now. I'm not holding my breath. But, get into the comments, ask us your questions. What is your experience of the mental health services in this country? Have you had a good story? Have you been able to get the help? Like the nurse Jessica there, she was spotted by a mental health practitioner and was offered something. Someone came to her, but, even as a nurse on ICU, she didn't know or think she ought to go somewhere or where she could go to get that help. Someone had to approach her and offer it. And if someone who's working in the NHS and in a traumatic job, which ICU is on a good day, that doesn't know that, and if during a pandemic the bosses aren't offering them it, then there's going to be far more widespread, and it's no wonder we've got a lot of vacancies in the NHS as a result. So get into the comments, ask us tell us what your experiences are, tell us what your solutions would be. Can you just throw money at it? Has there got to be something else done? But interestingly, right at the end of that spread on the page 4.5, it does say that 19% of people, almost 1 in 5, say their mental health has improved in the pandemic. So, there is a significant minority of people for whom working from home, worrying more about your family and the important things in life, perhaps, than, where the next buck is coming from all the time, feel a little bit better for it. So well done them. But the other 80%, of course, have got other issues. Now, in another brilliant bit of not being able to read the tea leaves, even when the pot is being emptied on his head, the Prime Minister says there is no need for an inquiry into the mistakes, the mischances, and some of the fundamental institutional issues that led to the murder of Sarah Everard in March. And that is despite the fact, Jason, his conference has only been going a couple of days, and it's already awash with backbenchers and activists telling him an inquiry like this is needed. Not just into Sarah's death, but what it shows up about how the police handle these things, what it shows up about institutionalized misogyny and other issues. So why in the name of all that's holy doesn't Boris announce this? It has no possible downside for him that I can see, to say, yes, let's have an inquiry into what's going on with the murder of women in this country. Because, how can that make him look bad? Why doesn't he do it? What's the issue? Tell me, Jason.
I really don't know the answer to this question, Susie, because it's quite an easy one to do. As you say, there's no downside for him. It's it's not something which is necessarily going to kind of come back and haunt them politically. So it's very odd. And say, trust the police as the Prime Minister did, seemed a particularly kind of insensitive statement, given what happened to Sarah Everard. She actually, she did put her trust in the police, and look what happened. I mean, it's appalling. So there's a major anxiety amongst particularly young women and girls about how safe they feel. We know that violence against women is rising, and we know that the police, as you say, it's not one bad apple; it's a whole orchard, and that's the problem. And I was thinking about this. I was kind of looking at all organizations have moments when they have to kind of face the reality of what they've done. And with journalists, it was the hacking. With MPs, it was expenses. We've been through this. This happens in organizations. With the police, it just seems endless. It's kind of Stephen Lawrence. It's kind of they don't seem to have learned anything from that. They just, it's one kind of crises after another with them, and lessons that never seem to get learned. And I think the case for inquiry here is really strong, because at some point the culture in the police has got to change.
Yeah, you'd have thought so. Now, Pamela says, have you ever tried to flag a bus down after it's left a bus stop? I have, Pamela. I suspect you have. I have hammered on the side of a bus as it's pulling away and nearly been taken under his wheels. And still, you're only running for a bus. The driver just goes, whatever, and carries on. He's got to hit his target and get to the next stop. The problem is, I suspect, Jason, that Boris Johnson has never had to flag a bus down in his life.
Well, unless it has 350 million on the side.
I know, but that was waiting for him, wasn't it? Frankly.
Yeah.
It didn't go without him on it. So he had no worries.
Yeah. I mean, he likes making buses, though, doesn't he? Curiously.
Yes. He likes painting buses. He likes making buses. He likes telling women that a bus will save them.
Yeah.
It's not happened yet, Boris, if you're watching, which I'm sure you are. But a few pages later, after that Sarah Everard story, there's a little report down at the bottom of the paper there, underneath the Pandora paper stuff, about a police officer from the Met who was due in court today charged with rape. Now, he too was in diplomatic protection squad. He too was off duty at the time of the alleged offence, but he was at least suspended the same day that he was arrested. Now, he can't talk much about that case because of contempt of court, which means he must get a fair trial. But it does show, doesn't it, Jason, that Wayne Couzens was not a lone rotten apple. It's the barrel that's got the issues.
There is, I mean, there's a question of vetting for a start. Let's specifically talk about Wayne Couzens here for legal reasons, but how is their vetting procedure working in the police? How are these people able to join? And even worse with Wayne Couzens, he was kind of, as you say, on the firearms diplomatic protection lot. And that's really quite frightening. And then there's the question of the culture within the police. We heard horrific stories about, of them kind of ignoring women's complaints, sharing indecent images, etc., etc. This kind of very macho, misogynistic culture, at some point it has to change. And perhaps the most depressing thing about this is kind of, the police is led by Cressida Dick, who's a woman, and you thought that maybe actually she might have some kind of wish to change this macho culture, but she seems to almost be kind of like excusing it at times by her failure.
I do think sometimes the person at the top of an organisation should not be of that organisation. I think this might be one of those instances. Now, Caroline says, is violence against women actually rising? I think you mean. Yes, it is. The stats show that domestic abuse in particular has massively risen during the pandemic because of lockdown, because domestic abuse is linked really to male control. And if a man feels that he can no longer control his environment, he can't control work, he can't control his family, or he can't control whatever's going on, he can sometimes lash out. And that's what is the root of domestic abuse. And that is rising, and it's got worse during the pandemic.
And prosecutions are falling as well, which is the other side of it. So they're being let down both ways. They're being let down by the criminal justice service and being let down by the police. Yeah.
Systemic underfunding of courts and everything else means that it can take 2 or 3 years now for a crime or an allegation to get to court and get decided. And someone was telling me at Labour conference last week that criminal injuries compensation, you can't get it if you apply for it more than 2 years after an offence happened. So if you don't get your conviction for 3 years, you don't get your criminal injuries compensation for being raped, which would pay for your therapy and other things. So it's pretty appalling. Now, we do have some other stuff going on. We've got some questions, I think, about the Wayne Couzens case, which we're going to put up, but we're going to obviously not talk about the case that's due in court today. June says it speaks volumes about the police that one of their number was known as the rapist and was able to continue in his role. That is one of the issues, June, because there were several women that worked with Wayne who later reported him for harassment after he was arrested for the murder of Sarah Everard, who didn't feel able to do it beforehand. There were male colleagues who said that they were very uncomfortable around him and they weren't able to report him or stand up to him because of the culture, because of the internal thing that you were talking about, Jason. And there has been some senior female police officers who said, look, if you complain against your male colleagues, then when you're in a violent confrontation in the street and you radio for backup's not there. Backup goes, turn the radio off, and they'll let you get a kick in as punishment for speaking out. Why don't we start doing something more sensible, which is having, anonymity for whistleblowers in the police. Why don't we make breach of police standards a crime, which would enable them to be pursued after they resign from the force? There's so many things that could be done that aren't being done. What is the reason that Cressida Dick and all the politicians are forming this little protective circle around each other and saying, no, it's fine? Because nobody thinks it is. Nobody thinks it's fine. How can they be this obtuse?
And it's almost like they don't want to admit the scale of a problem within the police. They don't want to admit that they've got a vetting problem, they've got a recruitment problem, they've got a cultural problem. And this is, I mean, I agree with Pat. It's I mean, I'm not sure it's necessarily shameful, but it's extraordinary they decide to extend her contract after kind of,
Oh, Jason's broken up a bit there. He may be having. You've been turning into Stephen Hawking. It should sort itself out in a bit. Hopefully, it'll settle down. But I think you were saying that it's extraordinary that she was able to extend her contract and so on. But anyone anywhere could tell you, especially journalists recently, that if you try to not reveal the thing that is a bit shonky about your organisation, it will come out eventually, and it will be worse when it does. So you might as well just cough at the start. Now, thank you for your questions. Do let us know, what's your experience of mental health services in Britain today? Are they good? Are they bad? Are they mediocre? What can be done to fix it? Let us know. Keep watching the Mirror during the week. We're having, as Jason said, a big week-long investigation to the general state of things, which is what the Mirror always does anyway. It does very well. We're doing one about mental health this week. But first, before we go to the last of your questions and we wrap up, there is some good news, and here it is. Now, Rochelle Ramsey is only 8 years old. Look at there, she is sweet. But she has already saved her dad's life. She was getting herself a glass of water about 3 o'clock in the morning, and she heard her dad, Chris, gasping for breath. She thought that didn't sound right. And she woke up her mum, who called an ambulance, and he was later diagnosed with pneumonia and septic shock. She saved his life. Now, Chris has multiple sclerosis, so perhaps Rochelle is quite used to keeping an eye on him, Jason. But doesn't this show what wonders we could achieve if we made first aid training part of the national curriculum and all children had the kind of knowledge and experience that Rochelle must have?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, it's it's good on Rochelle. Just kind of realizing her dad was laboring with difficulty with heavy breathing. They woke her mother up. She rings 999, and as they said, if she hadn't done this, he probably would have died. So this is an amazing story. Yeah, I mean, I'm all in favour of teaching first aid in schools. I think it'd be really useful. I've had to do it for journalism. I had to do what they call a hostile environment course. And I suddenly realised in my kind of 30s when I first did it, I hadn't got any knowledge at all. So no, it's great.
Yeah, and I did that hostile environment course as well, which we were all put through, I think, for insurance reasons, after one of our colleagues was murdered by the Taliban in Afghanistan. And it has come in helpful recently. My daughter fell over and she's cut her leg really badly and was actually pumping blood everywhere. It was horrible. But it does kind of kick in. You go, right, not tourniquet, but stop the blood. I know how to do that. We do this. We go here. We do that. Bish, bash, bosh. We do that. Other people around me were going, yeah. So it does come in useful to have a bit of first aid training. And in fact, there is the British Red Cross do free, I think they are, or very cheap, first aid courses for children and parents, expectant parents as well. I went to one when I was pregnant, and they are great. And you can get an app on your phone that talks you through it as well. So if you are expecting, if you have young children, go and get the British Red Cross little first aid course. It's very handy. Jack says, there is a vetting problem with the police. For many years, I worked with an officer who was taken off the street and put into communications. Later, it was revealed he was sent to prison for sexually abusing his daughter. I don't know if that happened before, after, or during, Jack, but there has been some revelations over the weekend, Jason, about police officers even being, I think it was in the Sunday Mirror, wasn't it, even being recruited after being convicted of indecent exposure, for example. There's a fundamental issue there. There are coppers on the beat right now who've got criminal records. How? I couldn't go and get a job at the police because I've got a record as a journalist.
Trust the police.
Astonishing behaviour. I don't think we do all trust the police. Whatever Boris Johnson says. Mike says, people saying the Met scandal is one bad apple seem to forget the rest of the phrase and what it means. One bad apple spoils the barrel. So if you say there is one bad apple, Mike's right, it means the barrel is already gone. That's the point. So something needs to be sorted out. But back to Rochelle, and I think that was fantastic work, Rochelle. If you're watching, well done you. I dare say this will mean that all kids say that they should be allowed to stay up late past the point their parents go to bed just to check they're still breathing properly. It's not going to work. Get to bed. You have school tomorrow. Thank you for joining me, Jason. Thank you, everyone, for watching. And join us again on Wednesday for another edition of the News Agenda. Bye-bye.